This is not just a Cold War story. It's the story of how the science of control began, in secret labs under the name MK Ultra, and how it evolved into the algorithms, feeds, and echo chambers that shape your thoughts today. We're exploring the origins of modern brainwashing, and what it means to live inside its latest version. It begins with a sound, a voice recorded somewhere in the early 50s. A man says,
"Can you still hear your own thoughts?"
Then static. For years, the recording was filed under Project MK Ultra. What you're about to hear is not speculation. It's history. Documented, classified, and almost erased. A government experiment, they said, to understand the mind. But beneath the paperwork and acronyms, it was something older. A search for control. And like every search for control, it started with fear. That fear never really left us. It just found new instruments. We'll get there.
Security is not taken for granted.
In the early days of the Cold War, fear was currency. Not the kind you spend, the kind that spends you. America had won the war, but lost its certainty. Reports came from Korea, captured soldiers returning home. Changed. They spoke like strangers.
The communists released back to us the several thousand men they had held for nearly 3 years.
Some confessed to crimes they never committed. Others defended the enemy. The word used was brainwashing.
Fellow Americans, don't go on with this senseless war. Stop being the tools of the rich capitalists who start wars for profit. Join us as guests of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army.
To the public, it was a myth. To the CIA, it was a challenge. If the Soviets had found a way to break the human will, America needed to find a stronger one. They believed thought could be mapped, measured, modified, that the mind could be reduced to a system of inputs and reactions, like a code waiting to be rewritten. Psychologists, chemists, and doctors were recruited in secret. They were told they were defending freedom. They were given no moral compass, only a mission to understand how thought bends and how it breaks. In classified rooms, under fluorescent light, they tried to turn fear into data. Hypnosis, isolation, electric shock, drugs that could erase, and drugs that could rewire. Most of what they found was chaos, but chaos too can be instructive. One scientist wrote in a hidden report, "We have not learned how to control the mind, only how easily it can be lost." That sentence was never meant to leave the lab, but it did. Because control, once imagined, can never be unimagined. They thought they could control fear. Instead, fear learned to control them. Decades later, the tools would look different, but the principles stayed the same. When you control what people fear, you control what they believe. We're not there yet, but we will be. Behind locked doors, science stopped asking why and started asking how far. The name on the files was MK Ultra, but it wasn't one experiment. It was a network of them, hidden under hundreds of code names, each feeding the same obsession: control. They began with the simple variables: sleep, light, memory.
Program ever conducted by the CIA in the United States. Patients at psychiatric hospitals, prisoners in federal institutions, and even people in the public were given drugs without their awareness or consent and experimented upon. They established what were called safe houses, where prostitutes would lure men to these apartments. And then once the men were in the apartments, they were dosed with LSD. And then they were basically studied by CIA scientists, usually behind a two-way mirror.
How much could you take away before a mind stopped being itself? When hypnosis failed, they added isolation. When isolation failed, they added pain. And when pain still wasn't enough, they turned to chemistry. In Montreal, one doctor believed he could cure madness by erasing identity. He called it depatterning.
It is a period of tremendous change in psychiatry. With the enormous amount of world unrest, we are seeing an enormous demand for knowledge concerning the effects of stress.
Patients entered as mothers, teachers, dreamers. They left as echoes, voices repeating words that weren't theirs, like ghosts of themselves, looped on tape. In California and New York, the program wore a different mask. Apartments disguised as bedrooms, mirrors that saw one way only. People lured inside, drugged with LSD, recorded from behind the glass. They called it Operation Midnight Climax, science hiding behind desire. Some experiments used prisoners, some students. Others, people who simply trusted the wrong doctor. Few remembered what was done to them, and fewer were ever told why. Among the scientists, one conscience began to fracture. He wrote that the greatest danger wasn't what they were doing, but what they were becoming. Days later, he fell from a hotel window. The file said suicide, and the report ended there. But fear doesn't end with a report. It lingers in corridors, in whispers, in data. Much of what we know survives only as fragments, so the mind fills in the rest. Because that's what the mind does. It builds patterns, even out of silence. Back then, they used drugs and isolation. Today, it's information and attention. The methods changed, the premise didn't. The rooms are brighter now, the experiments quieter. No syringes, no mirrors, just screens. But the objective hasn't changed. And yes, we'll get there. If you've made it this far, you already care about these stories. But many of you still watch without subscribing. If you want this project to keep growing and to keep these forgotten histories alive, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who'd understand why it matters. Every bit of support helps us stay independent and keeps the next story possible. We're in this together, so take a second. Do it now before the next chapter begins. By the late 60s, the experiment had slipped its leash. The walls of the lab could no longer contain it. The chemicals were the same, only the setting changed. LSD left the laboratories and leaked into the culture. What began as classified research was now in the hands of artists, students, and drifters, some searching for freedom, others for meaning. The irony? Much of it came from the same supply lines once funded by the government itself. They wanted control. Instead, they lost it. And a generation took the experiment into its own hands, not as test subjects, but as volunteers. And for the first time, control looked like liberation. Among those drawn to its edges was a man named Charles Manson. He moved through San Francisco's counterculture and through the same institutions once connected to MK Ultra's network. There's no proof he was part of the program, but the echoes are hard to ignore. Later investigations found overlapping traces, funding routes, medical institutions, names that reappeared in both networks. Impossible to confirm, but too specific to ignore. He used the same ingredients: isolation, repetition, suggestion, and drugs. He spoke the language of love and freedom, while building a structure of absolute control. Different purpose, same architecture. And maybe that's what matters most. Not whether he was programmed, but how easily we can be. A few years later, another story followed the same pattern. A young woman, Patty Hearst, kidnapped, broken, rebuilt. She stood beside her captors in a bank, holding a weapon, calling herself by a new name. The cycle was repeating: capture, fear, belief, obedience. The agencies called it psychological warfare. The media called it chaos. But maybe it was something simpler, a mirror held up to everything we were already becoming. Both cases, Manson and Hearst, remain among the most disturbing echoes of that era. Each deserves a story of its own, and one day, we'll return to them. By then, the Cold War had new weapons, not missiles, not LSD. Television. The moving image became the new syringe. It didn't inject chemicals, it injected stories. And once again, the question was the same. Who controls what we see, and what we believe after we've seen it? In 1973, Richard Helms, the new CIA director, gave a shocking first order to erase the truth. Boxes of files, thousands of documents, all tracing back to the same coded name, MK Ultra. The official reason: to protect identities. The real one: to protect power. The order was simple: burn it, shred it, make it disappear. The experiment had become a liability, and in the logic of control, what cannot be justified must be erased. Only a few documents survived, lost in the accounting department, misfiled, unnoticed. Accidents that history would later call evidence. Years later, those fragments resurfaced before the Church Committee. Enough to confirm what many had suspected, but never enough to reveal the whole picture. Senator Frank Church stood before Congress and said, "We must never again allow intelligence to become the enemy of freedom." The room applauded. The cameras clicked. And yet, when the lights dimmed, secrecy won again. They erased the paper trail, but not the idea, because control doesn't die with the evidence. It adapts. It learns. It hides in new systems. More efficient. Less visible. Back then they burned paper. Today we delete data. The methods changed. The forgetting didn't. And if no one remembers, does it mean it never happened? Or just that someone learned how to make us forget? Control never vanished. It only changed its language. The wires became invisible, the laboratories became platforms, and the scientists turned into designers. And the test subjects? All of us. No more LSD. No secret rooms. Only screens. Endless, glowing, personalized screens. They don't erase memory anymore. They overwrite it, one scroll at a time. We feed the system with our fears, our opinions, our attention. And in return, it feeds us back a version of reality it already knows we'll believe. Every click becomes a confession, every share, an experiment, every silence, a data point. And just like before, the goal isn't truth, it's predictability. We call it engagement. They once called it control. Different age, same architecture. Maybe the real experiment was never about breaking minds, but about measuring how willingly we surrender them. The fear that started in the 50s never left. It simply learned our language, and now we whisper it back to each other. The program was terminated, the files destroyed, but the idea survived. And maybe that was the real experiment all along. Not what they did to us, but what we would eventually do to ourselves. Today, no one needs to force the pill or the tape or the lie. We take them willingly, as entertainment, as news, as truth. Control no longer hides in basements or briefcases. It hides in the noise, in the comfort of being connected, in the illusion of choice. And maybe that's why we'll never see it coming. Because this time, we built it ourselves.